So, hello everybody. Today I would like to talk to you about another role-playing game for the fantasy setting that you can use instead of maybe one of the most controversial rule sets out there, regardless of what the company that has been publishing it has been up to most recently. Let's not talk about 180-degree turns because we don't know what the future holds. So essentially, today I would like to talk about Dungeon World. Now, Dungeon World is a system that is a little bit older as well. It was published in 2012 and hasn't had a reset of the rules or any changes to the rules since then. There have been plenty of reprints, but still it's very difficult to get the book, especially here in Europe. And it is based on the rule set powered by the Apocalypse, like Monster of the Week, like Bluebeard's Bride, like others that are out there. And it is very different from traditional games. And those of you who would like to see what powered by the Apocalypse games are like can go to my channel, and we have been playing Monster of the Week for 2 years now, on and off. So we have like a set of characters and they go through different adventures. That's for patrons only. So those of you who are not patrons, unfortunately, will not be able to watch this. But if you just type in Powered by the Apocalypse or Monster of the Week, I'm pretty sure you will find other channels that are playing this as well. And there may even be Dungeon World games out there. I haven't really checked. Now, the Powered by the Apocalypse system is usually a D6 system. So you roll 2d6s and you have stats that vary from genre to genre, because Powered by the Apocalypse in and of itself is genre agnostic. There are fantasy-based games, there are modern games, there are horror games like Monster of the Week is more kind of like horror sci-fi, or like paranormal, think X-Files, that kind of thing. And depending on what you're playing, you have different stats, but they are pretty much what you would expect to see, something like Constitution, Strength. They may have different names, but that's what they are. This is the one thing that you will, when you first look at this type of game, see that is immediately familiar. You do not roll d20s. You have 2d6s, so again, that kind of depends, because in Dungeon World you do have other dice as well, but usually it's just 2d6s. And basically, the main difference is that instead of having a character sheet that is the same for everybody, and then people having different abilities, maybe, or features or feats or whatever you want to call them, the naming again varies from system to system, you pick an archetype at the beginning, and each archetype has a playbook. Now, this playbook consists of moves, and moves are, if you like, abilities that each character type has. And they are very different from character type to character type. And each move describes what happens when you roll a success. So 10 plus is always a success. And 7 to 9 is a success with a downside, and then anything that is 7 or less, that is 6 or less, is a fail. And for each of the moves, you have this kind of set of information that is important for the game, and you basically go through the story rolling on these moves and trying to basically solve the story, whatever it is. So in a way, this is a little bit different, but also quite familiar. So if you've played role-playing games before, this whole move thing will not really be that weird. It's just that they're framing it differently, because to me there is no difference if I say, oh, I can sneak, or if you have like something like stealth as a move, or you move stealthily or something like that. While there are lots of moves that are different for each character type, there are also some moves that everyone shares, like, for example, in Dungeon World, hack and slash. That's what happens when you actually go into melee. Then there is the volley, which you use when you enter ranged combat. Then there is spout lore, which is more like a wisdom, getting information kind of move that everyone has access to. And of course, not only do the players have access to moves, but also each monster has access to moves. And as is normal with Powered by the Apocalypse, places also have moves. And this is basically where I would say that Powered by the Apocalypse becomes more different from traditional games in that it is a set of rules that govern the way the world is built. And I think this is something that is interesting, I would say, for anybody who's ever wanted to run a game, because when you read any Powered by the Apocalypse rulebook, you will learn a lot about how to structure the environment. They do it using a really strict rule set, even down in Dungeon World to the question of if you have different types of settlements, and they basically call them steadings, and steadings have tags, and they basically range from very, very poor and very, very small to very, very big and very, very rich, namely a city. And if you want to know if one steading would attack another, you can basically then trace the distance from steading A to steading B in days, and then each day is a ration. So basically they take into account logistics. So basically, if it's 10 days away from steading B, then steading A would have to consume 10 rations to get there. And if you, let's say, have an army of 500 people, this would be 500 times 10 rations that you need to figure out. But then also the difference in size or strength between the two steadings, that would give you an indication of whether steading A is going to attack steading B. When I first read this, I was like, okay, that's interesting, because that's almost like playing a war game at a strategic war game at army level, where you basically think, okay, well, would we attack A or B or C, and what would be, logistically speaking, most appropriate? They also tell you a lot about how to use locations in order to challenge the players. Like, for example, a location can have the move to separate the party so that you put somebody on their own, which is a move. And so basically, if you really want to understand how to structure a narrative, any book from the Powered by the Apocalypse is going to be very, very helpful. With regard to Dungeon World, when you buy the book, you get the whole rule set that you require. You get all of the playbooks for all of the archetypes. You get all of the monsters and all of their moves, as well as all of the information that you need. And it will set you up for a complete fantasy storytelling. Now, Dungeon World is supposed to be a narrative game, which, when you look at how strict the rules are with regard to building steadings, etc., it seems to be counterintuitive. And it's one of the ones that always causes some kind of dissonance in my brain, because I'm like, yeah, well, this is not really narrative. The way you describe how the world should be built is far from narrative. Because not only do they tell you how to set up steadings, etc., they also tell you how to set up the whole plot line, and they structure the plot around so-called fronts. Now, fronts you could also call adversaries or nemesis or dangers. So essentially, they ask you to think about what is the essential threat that your players are going to be facing. There is supposed to be a campaign threat, which is a big one, and there are different types of threats that you can choose from, and each type of threat again has some kind of motivation that you can follow through. And they advise the dungeon master to basically sit down and come up with a threat, then find its motivation, and you pick and choose from a list that is presented there. That doesn't mean that this is an exhaustive list, and I don't even think that they are trying to be exhaustive, but if you're new to this is going to be a great help. And if you have been running campaigns or stories for a long time, you will notice that they have really managed to capture the essence of the archetypes of storytelling, because in fantasy there are tropes that are always recurring. I would even go so far as to say in any storytelling, we have probably exhausted all of the tropes that humankind can come up with 1 gazillion times, and everything that we're writing today and reading today is just regurgitating old tropes, but maybe putting them into new and interesting um, gowns, so that the emperor does have new clothes. But the again, I think that the structure that they are suggesting is helpful for anyone to not lose sight of where the campaign is going. Um, if you are interested in seeing how to structure a game using Dungeon World, there is at least one video that I'm aware of where somebody took the Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure for 5e and basically turned it into a Dungeon World adventure using steadings, using fronts, etc. I actually like playing Monster of the Week. I will say that the combat system sucks, but the combat system in Dungeon World is very, very different because that is really more like you are used to it. Um, each player and each monster takes a turn. You attack, you do damage. Um, and it's a lot less, I would say, problematic than the Monster of the Week, where we have played it and we have decided that we need to change the combat system because it simply doesn't work the way it's envisaged. Now, with regard to playbooks, because that, of course, is one of the most important things when you want to consider taking on a different rule system. How much player choice is there? Now, in the book, when I look at it, there is enough to go round. You have clerics, you have mages, you have paladins, you have fighters, you have thieves, you have everything, in my opinion, that you need and then some. However, since this game has been around for 11 years now at this stage, there is a lot of fan content out there. There are different playbooks that you can get. You can buy them, or there are free playbooks as well. And I've just basically taken a quick look, and I see things like Beastmaster, etc. So people have really been working on this. Now, I didn't buy any of them, so I can't really tell you if they are any good because a lot of this is fan-made, or all of this is fan-made content. I also don't know how balanced they are because playbooks can be used to hmm, um, if you are going all out, it can happen that you end up with a completely, let's say, OP playbook. And there is a video that I watched about the Paladin, and I was a bit surprised because the problems, because basically the premise of the video is the Dungeon World Paladin OP? And basically the person doing the video went through all of the different aspects of the paladin and basically then said, okay, the paladin could do this, which is totally OP. But then again, he ended up with just say no to your player. And I'm like, okay, well, if I have a player that is trying to use a playbook or any kind of feature or feat or whatever in such a way as described in this video, I would not even want to play with them because they're basically just trying to game the system. So I'm not sure if this is based on the fact that this particular video maker has a really immature gaming group, which could be the case. But I would say that if you're playing with people who are actual storytellers and not system gamers, as it were, you will not run into this issue. There are also tips on how to make your own moves and how to make your own monsters and how to make your own playbooks. There is also the possibility of multi-classing in that at some point you can take moves from other playbooks, so from different archetypes and their playbooks. So even that is possible in this game. And they even call it multi-classing because we have to remember 2012, people were still kind of like in the frenzy of, oh my God, we have now fourth edition, it's all terrible. Let's play Pathfinder. Or if we want something that is not as complex as Pathfinder first edition, what do we play? And of course, this idea of multi-classing is something that is very much D&D, and so they try to bring this in. And it, in my opinion, probably works. I'm not a fan of multi-classing in general because I really don't like it when you have like people taking stuff from other classes, because then it's almost like I want each class to be very separate and very distinct, because otherwise, why are there classes? And I would always not do it. And I would also be very wary if my players want to start multi-classing, because it may devalue somebody else's character who is of a particular class, because suddenly everyone can heal, or suddenly everyone can tank, and suddenly everyone can do this, that, and the other. But this is a valid option in this book, and it is also catered for in the rules. So to my mind, Powered by the Apocalypse, I think, is a system that really needs you to get used to it. It's maybe not the easiest game system to pitch. I certainly love Monster of the Week. I am not sure if it is possible to actually play a satisfying campaign using Dungeon World. But it is definitely something where you can have episodic play happen. So basically, if you have like a group of characters that want to just basically explore a world, and they actually explain to you how to do this, they want you to draw a map together with the players and create the world, where you then basically have a base that the players can live in, or the player characters can live in, and then they start venturing out from there. Then I think it's going to work really well. Um, but at the end of the day, also there is a limit to character progression, because that you don't really have levels. So it's not like you can go to level 10 and make sure that the monster scale and stuff. Um, it is something that, especially for example in Monster of the Week, we notice that we have now reached a stage where people cannot actually progress very easily, because you gain experience by failing your rolls. And people fail their rolls more often than you might think. And every time you fail a roll, you gain experience. And every time the experience meter is full, you get to choose another move. And it is something where I think you reach a stage where your characters are not developable anymore quite quickly. So this whole idea of epic play, where you have a campaign that runs for 5 years, I think is not possible unless you really curb the player's ability to progress. But other than that, I would say even don't buy the book, but you can get the PDF as well. You can buy the PDF and just check it out. Even if you are a DM and would like some information on how to use locations, maybe even how to structure short story arcs, how to structure, let's say, a multi-shot, 3 to 4 sessions, how to do this. I really enjoyed the book for that, and I think it's a really brilliant resource for DMs, even if you're not playing Dungeon World or Powered by the Apocalypse. So that's my recommendation for someone who would like to move to a different system. With regard to complexity, I would say it is a lot more complex than a D&D 5th edition, but for other reasons. Not because there are very many rules that you have to remember, like in Pathfinder 1st edition, but because the way play is structured is very different from more traditional D20 systems. So talk to you soon. Bye.